Okay, we're gonna start our May Housing and Land Use Committee meeting of CB7. Can I get a motion to adopt our agenda, or if there are any comments?
Second move.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Okay, so our first item is we have Edith Suchen here to present to us their thoughts on the development of the former ABC site.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Edith Suchen.
Old friend.
An old, yes, old friend. I hope you view me as an old friend of CB7. Great to see a bunch of familiar faces and some new faces, and I'll introduce myself later to you one-on-one. So I'm here, not so much for a formal presentation or anything like that, for a discussion. I'm here to tell you where we're at, because we had committed to a text amendment. However, we also heard there was a lot of discussion within the community about what they hope for this very uniquely large site, prominent and unique site in the Upper West Side. And there have been discussions as well with the developer. So, you know, I'm here also to hear from you and to get your input, and to answer questions if you have questions. Okay, so our journey into this, you all know certainly better than I, that there was a proposal from Landmark West to incorporate this big ABC site into the Lincoln Square Special District. And it would have included as the large site, which is zone C47, and applied the tower coverage regulations and the packing the bulk regulations. And frankly, effectively, it would have had not technically a height limit, but the resulting mass was something that we at city planning, we were not comfortable with. And I've talked to Sean and to folks, and you know, and so we've been upfront about that. We thought that the resulting mass, the bulk from proposal was very kind of monolithic, and while it did not have a height limit, you know, would have resulted in buildings maybe in the, let's say, 350 to 450 range. And because the site is so large, covering, you know, going, you know, 3/4 of the block, it would have been very imposing. And we think from an urban design and a city planning perspective, would have felt just rather monolithic and kind of oppressive on the street. So that, you know, we were asked, you know, what would we do differently? Okay. And what we would do differently is we would actually do much similar. We would do a lot that's similar to that proposal, which is to include the site in the special district and to apply some of the rules. You know, we would not, however, apply the tower coverage rule. So I'm sorry, this is very technical, but I think you all know this, but there's a requirement that at least 30% of the lot coverage above a height of 85 feet, that there's be a minimum coverage of 30%. Okay, so we actually propose eliminating that, and that is fully in line with what we did as part of City of Yes. So it's a City of Yes, we are actually going for more flexibility because we want to encourage more housing development. We think that's really important in this time of a dire housing crisis, especially affordable housing crisis. We need to make it easier to build housing. So as part of City Yes, we eliminated a bunch of rules that we thought just kind of got in the way of that. So you all know City of Yes. You're very active participants in that. So I won't go through all that, but I just did bring it up here because eliminating the 30% minimum tower coverage above a height of 85 feet is fully in line with City of Yes. Okay. The other thing that, but we would still maintain the packing the bulk regulation. which is that we would require minimum 60% of the bulk be provided under a height of 150 feet. Okay, so this is not we were not proposing a height limit, same as Landmark West. We're not proposing a height limit, but this is a one control that frankly does actually, you don't have limit, you do have some control on height because you're requiring the majority of the bulk to be below 150 feet. We would also require street walls. We think, okay, street wall is like the property, going all the way to the property line. We think it's really important to hold that street line. You get a much nicer feel when you walk down the street, and it's very typical also in the Upper West Side. And we would also require a base, a building to have a base of a certain height. So this is to prevent, big gaps in the block. This is so we get a nice continuous, street wall feel. So you're holding the street wall. Okay, so those are the things we would be doing under our proposal. Our proposal is not an upzoning. It's not a rezoning of the map, similar to Landmark West. It maintains the C47, which is, as we all know now, 12 FAR through UAP, Universal Affordability Preference. So you can build up to 12 FAR. But it does not require, it's not MIH, because there's not an upzoning here. We're not changing the zoning from C47 to something higher, which the state has enabled us to do. We can now, map it through ULERN, our 11s, our 12s, so higher density districts. We're not proposing that as part of what we've been thinking about. Hi, Ethel. Yes.
Hi there. It's CB7 with the option for to go up to 12. Isn't that the zoning in the area that way?
Could you repeat
In the
that
Lincoln
question?
Center,
Yes.
in the whole Lincoln
Mhm.
Center.
Can I stop you for 1 second? Why don't we let Edith
Oh,
finish?
it was just a question just about what you were saying. You said it's 12. But I think that the area is 10 with the option.
That's a good
C47.
clarification, because the UAP is essentially it's not mandatory. You're right.
Correct.
You're right.
So
It's not
that's
mandatory. It's a elective. It's a replacement of the
Yeah.
voluntary inclusionary. Okay, so
Mhm.
that's a
Thanks.
good clarification. Thank you, Ethel. Okay, so but back to our intentions. We're not intending to upzone it to R11. And I understand, and I heard that there's some discussion here in the community about that at the community board, which I have to say is exciting to someone who's, to an agency that has been fighting hard and proposed some major zoning overhaul to promote more housing. It's wonderful to hear, throughout the city that there are community boards and communities and folks who are, looking for these opportunities for more density, more housing. And, we are actually on the cusp of starting our public engagement for the Manhattan Plan, which is a huge initiative announced earlier this year to solicit from the public and from everyone, from anyone who's engaged with city and how we to identify areas for where we can do more housing, provide more housing in Manhattan. So we're really excited about that. So it's wonderful to hear that there's that kind of excitement here. Okay, I think I'll probably leave it at that and ask if you need any clarification about what I said, and I would love to answer your questions too.
I have two, and I'm not as steeped in these procedures as some of my colleagues here. What you're proposing, would that require any public review process through, it was just because it's not a change in zoning, through CB7 or the council?
Absolutely. What we're proposing is a text amendment, which does go through a very rigorous public review process. So, it would be first presented at the City Planning Commission. It would get referred out to Community Board for their review, referred out to the Borough President, go back to the Commission for their review, goes to City Council. So it's a very robust
And
public
that's
review
That's
process.
a ULURP or it's just something else?
It looks like ULURP, it really looks and smells and everything like ULURP, but it's technically not ULURP, I mean, because, you know, I guess the only real difference is that you can, it's not on a clock, you don't, it doesn't have to be on this 2 month, 1 month, yeah, but it goes through basically the same process.
Okay, and my second question is, as I heard you, there's nothing that the Department of City Planning is talking about now, or plans to propose, that would require any affordable housing, is that correct?
That is correct. And I'm glad you bring that up. So I think that's a really important point. The text amendment it cannot require affordable housing. The only way you can require affordable housing through zoning is through through an upzoning, where you're creating increased residential capacity, significant increased residential capacity in upzoning. And that is done through mapping MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing. That's not the case here. So I think this is a really important point, because I know that there have been some discussions about engaging with the developer under the current C47, under the C47 zoning district, because I understand that there have been, you know, some discussions about providing affordable housing through an agreement in the C47. So that is, I think, a very worthwhile discussion. Yes.
Okay, a couple of things. We kept hearing, first of all, is this rezoning only for that specific site? Or is it in general, what triggers it?
Okay, so when you say the rezoning, do you mean the text amendment or,
Right, what I'm
okay,
talking about.
okay, the text amendment? That would just be for the majority of the block that the ABC site is on. It's really just for the block between 66th,
Okay.
67th, Central Park West, and Columbus. Doesn't go all the way to the park, but just about.
Right,
So,
and we heard a lot about R11.
mhm.
So is R11 being contemplated of being enacted on the Upper West Side?
Well, in order for the R11 to be put in place here, it would have to be mapped. So there would have to be
Right.
a rezoning, right? We at the Department of Planning, we're not proposing that.
Okay.
We're not proposing that. And, you know, even we're excited about the R11 and the R12. We're excited that it's a possibility to go above 12 FAR. You may have heard of our MSMX neighborhood plan, Midtown South. We're proposing mapping R11 and R12 in those locations. So those are FARs of 15 and 18 FAR for residential. But that's part of a neighborhood plan, a big neighborhood plan. It's not, frankly, it's not normal for city planning to just rezone one private property. You know, if the private developer if the property owner is seeking that, that's that property owner's prerogative, and can propose it, and we'll go through ULURP and all that. But I think perhaps your question was, are we proposing it? And the answer is we're not proposing the R11.
Okay, and there's one other one, and this is kind of hypothetical, and excuse me, my naivete on this one. Here is this huge site. We are all talking about affordable housing. Why not make it mandatory? Why not do MIH there?
We don't have the legal basis to require MIH when there's no upzoning. The only way to get MIH is when you have a significant uptick in residential capacity. So you could require, MIH would be mapped here if you went up to an R11 or R12. But when you
go up to 12 from 10?
no.
But that's why it's the Lincoln Center, the whole district, it's 10 with the option to go
Yeah,
to 12
no.
as written?
Because you already have that option today, you can go to 12.
Yes.
So there's actually not an increase in the residential capacity without a rezoning, without rezoning to map. You have to map MIH.
Thank you, I'm sorry. Yeah.
If I could just follow just
Sure.
quick on what I asked. Does Department of City Planning itself have the power, should it choose to initiate a remapping to 12 or to 11 or 12?
Yes, we
Yeah.
certainly have the
So you
power.
could
We're
put-
proposing it in another,
Yeah,
in a
I
neighborhood
understand,
plan
elsewhere.
that covers,
Yeah,
you know,
so it's not as if you
many
need
blocks.
either the developer or the community or anybody else to ask for it. You could initiate it.
We could initiate it, but from a policy perspective, it is, I mean, there's a question about appropriateness. You know, if government just swoops in and just rezones one property, you know, and also we have to make decisions about resources, how we're gonna spend our time and energy, you know, like, you know, a ULURP, it's a big effort, right? It goes through, you know, it's a lot of effort to bring it to certification. You know, you got environmental review, you've got the engagement, you've got, it goes through the 7-month clock process. So, you know, for us, from the city's perspective, you know, it's where we want to spend our time and energy on, like, on is on neighborhood plans for when it comes to rezonings, because that's where you get, you know, the most, you know, impact.
Seema, Richard has.
Yeah, Richard, do you have a question?
You're muted.
Yeah,
Just like that.
I had two questions. First, under the optional zoning where the developer can go up to 12 in exchange for affordable housing, do you have a view as to the economics of that? That is, would a developer, if he goes up 2 FAR, but he has to devote 2 FAR to affordable housing, how likely it is that the developer will do that? And the second question is, you know, and this is really, you know, something that our committee has batted around for several months. If the city is serious increasing housing everywhere in the city, there's limited opportunity on the Upper West Side, and we are offering the possibility of increasing it through mandatory housing. We made the decision that there's not much difference between 1,000-foot tower and a 1,200-foot tower if we can get affordable housing. I understand that it's a pain in the neck for city planning to do that, and it requires a lot of work. But, you know, have you weighed the benefit to the housing stock in general in the city against the inconvenience to city planning of doing a remapping? So those are my two questions.
Thanks, Richard, and nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Same here.
I understand your question, because like we're very motivated to increase housing supply, to, you know, we went through the past 3 years have been really dedicated to changing zoning so that we can encourage more housing, and not just housing, it was also economic development and zero carbon. You know, for us, like, yes, we want to find all these opportunities, which is why we're launching the Manhattan Plan. And the public engagement for that is literally starting next month, like in a matter of weeks, actually in June. And we'll be soliciting from community boards, from like broad array of stakeholders. And we have a final report coming out in December. That's where our focus, our time and energy focus is on. So it's not so much a rezoning one side is inconvenient. There is the policy concern about, like, is it appropriate for us to just rezone one property? And number two, like, it does come with a big opportunity cost. It means that we won't be able to focus on other things that we need to do, including the Manhattan Plan. And we also encourage, you know, the community board to look at the areas, you know, it could this site or the rest of Lincoln Square Special District or beyond, right? And engage in the Manhattan Plan process. But it would be a bit of a short circuiting for us to jump, you know, the public engagement, and for us to swoop in and say, okay, we're going to rezone this one site. It's a very, very abnormal. It's not normal for us to do something like that. So I just want to make sure I'm very clear about that.
It's not, but it's just such a huge site.
Right.
Yeah.
And there really is nothing else in the Upper West Side. We have looked.
I don't think you addressed Richard's first question.
Oh,
either.
sorry, it was the first question.
His
Apologize.
first question is the developer gonna do it anyway? Is
The
it gonna be
economic
the
viability.
economic?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Yes,
what
thank
are
you
the
for that.
economics?
Yeah, I don't think I'm the right person to address the economics of that because that deal would happen outside of city planning. That's happening separate. So my understanding is that there are representatives from Extel here, so I think that's a good question to pose. I don't-
Where are the where is the representative?
They will talk after.
Okay,
after
okay.
they're done.
Okay, so, yeah, I don't think I can participate in that conversation. And I mean, because I frankly, we want to be party to the economics of that.
Wasn't that something that city planning had to consider when it adopted the voluntary increase? I mean, isn't it something that you
Oh,
had to be?
okay. I understand what you're asking, Richard. Yeah, yes, we did look into what does it mean to have a significant increase in FAR in order to trigger MIH, and I can't remember the percentage outright, maybe 30 or 40%. It was a significant, I can come back to you on that, but it was something substantial. And it's not like a written in stone kind of thing, but there does have to be an increase in FAR. And there wouldn't be one here under the C47 if you're proceeding with the C47.
Beverly? You have a question?
Yes, could you please just give us some sense of what your timeline is for completion of the text amendment? And we've been concerned about that, given the progress of the demolition permits and so on, that we want to be sure that everything is proceeding in a way that has the text amendment fully available when decisions are made about what goes on the site.
Yeah, I mean, our timing is this calendar year for, and, frankly, I think we had heard that there was a lot of activity, discussion about the site. And so, we're providing a little room to get some feedback to hear what's going on. Because we also heard that there was a prospect of getting affordable housing on this site as a C47 site.
Yeah.
And I thought that was quite a coup, and I mean, I know there may be some representatives here, so to get affordable housing, if that offer is standing, to get an offer for affordable housing under the C47, I think it's a little awkward, sorry. I think that's very interesting and something that the community board should consider.
Or Adam first and then Ethel.
So I understand why DCP wouldn't want to be the primary applicant on something like this. If the owner of the site were to propose an application with a number of other sites to make sure it's a well-considered plan and like, do you have any sense of whether that would be something that CPC would be interested in if DCP wasn't the lead applicant? Okay.
Yeah, yes, I mean, we would look at that, absolutely. And so an application is also an application, and so it goes through the public review process, but it's the property owner's prerogative to propose. And then we take it through a public review process. But given how receptive, the city fought actually, with championed getting rid of this arbitrary 12 FAR limitation that was a state law. And that's gone now. So that's great. We're enabled to go above 12 FAR. And that's why we're super excited about Manhattan Plan, because if we can, hear from the public about where they think these opportunities should be. I guess my only asterisk to this point is, is just you have to look at the uniquely large site. It's a very large site. So at 15 FAR on a 100,000 square foot site is big. And I've heard from the community that there's concerns about overall bulk. Like, you won't hear that so much from city planning because we are really juiced to look for more housing opportunities. But that's something I heard that the community board cares about.
Just to the committee has spoken internally and had sessions within and has emphasized and re-emphasized the need for affordable housing. It's at least my understanding that at some point in the recent past, the developer was, or the council member, no, I'm sorry, that the developer proposed a hotel in the project. And it's also my understanding that he would need a separate permission for that, and and it was there lively for him that he wanted that. And then it appeared that if he had to do another thing in terms of permits, he was out of it. Then more recently, and there are others who may know this more, there's been talk about that he has put or recommended something like, please correct me, a basketball court or tennis court. There was that as well. And the third thing is, in the middle of one, that he has purchased air rights of additional air from the other property owners on the block. So that is part of his overall concern. Secondly, this may not be the city planning thing at this moment, but certainly at least a council member had in a committee meeting here and with talking, oh, we wish we could, had also spoken about, for example, the museum that is nearby. And there was considerable behind the scenes conversation of perhaps including or helping to subsidize the expansion of the museum, because it is the property, but it's also Lincoln Center, an area of the arts, of housing. There should be more affordable housing, but there is reason to not only think of the big building, but to see what the community is about. And so I think that every one of these, what I've said, including the museum, which now is closing and is renovating itself, while there was conversation of, oh, wouldn't it be good if we subsidize a use and a building that is good for the community and for the public. So when we are talking now of 12, because he can do 12, I mean, and you're one who knows this, the 10 and 12, is there no way within the C47 plus the 2 FAR for there to be, is it politics or is it money to try to include and for him to subsidize some affordable housing, and for us to think creatively, either, I know it sounds silly, either on site or not the thing that we would have preferred, because people prefer affordable housing should go on site, but adjacent within Lincoln Center or something like that, creatively, by trying to work with all the goals that are now part of what everybody's talking about, but the developer isn't with the community board.
Okay, well, I think it's actually very helpful that the developers in the room, right, the Excel, because I think it's important for Excel to hear what are the community's, hopes and dreams, and what are the things that they're really interested in for the site. Because there are things that we just cannot do through zoning that go beyond the legal scope of what zoning can do. So for example, under the C47, we cannot require mandatory inclusionary housing. We cannot require a community facility. We cannot require certain things that are of great interest, to the community. But I think, there were some conversations happening between community leaders and Excel that might have delivered a basket of goods. So,
City council does.
and yeah, exactly. So I still encourage that route because it also time is of the essence, right? I mean, I think there's something that we have not talked about is how long a rezoning takes. A rezoning takes a long time. We're talking about years, right? The ULURP process itself may be a 7-month thing, but leading up to it with environmental review and like putting the application together and like all the engagement, it can take a long time. So if I've heard from the community that time is of the essence. I've heard this from the council member as well. So there may be a path. And frankly, I think we were just, my ears were so open and so excited when I heard that there was the discussions happening that may get to, a development that has things that the community is looking for, and that also provides the developer some expediency. Like there may be a path here. So I think it's really good and important that you all be, just say, what are the things that you're looking for on this site?
Can I ask something? We also have one, maybe I'll do the question online first. It says, we keep using the term affordable. What makes a unit affordable? How do we ensure these units remain financially viable in the long term?
Well, if it's under MIH, there are very strict standards about what we mean by affordable. If it's under, an agreement, with the developer that's outside of ULURP, that's different, and that could be something that's more bespoke. But MIH it's a set program where 20 to 30% of the units must be provided to folks who on average make 40, 60 or 80% of the AMI. So there's like a program, it's administered by HPD. So that's, yeah, and don't quote me on what the, I
Units,
can't
but
quote
not
the
square
AMI.
feet, square footage.
Square footage.
footage.
MIH is at 20 to 30% of the
So
square
that's not
footage.
units, that's square
Yeah, not
footage.
units, but the occupants of the units have to be within, certain percentage of the AMI, and they're permanently affordable.
And a follow-up question to that, Edith. So if there was some sort of conversation hypothetically about taking advantage of the UAP, that extra 2 FAR, is there any latitude in terms of how the affordable looks, meaning what bands there are, on-site, off-site?
Oh,
I know the UAP
yeah.
is very specific about it.
I think
I'm
that's
wondering-
specific. I think that's also, I think there was an average requirement of, I'm looking at
60.
60, yeah, 60, thank you. Yeah, there's also a
But there's-
requirement there.
And there's no latitude, that's.
If it's a
that's 2
formal,
FAR,
if it's a UAP thing, that's a formal thing. If there's another agreement, then that's
okay.
different.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm not usually the pie in the sky person, but when you say 6 months, I mean, and I assume that the developer also wants to begin in the next 6 months, and you were describing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I lost you. What is the 6 month? What's
Didn't
6
you
months?
say
To the end of the year. So
Oh, in this calendar year. Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I
Okay,
guess
no, I
because I'm
understand now.
thinking June to.
Yes,
Yeah,
okay.
and of course, the community board allegedly, though it can change, doesn't meet in the July and August. But I'm not a pie in the sky person, but I am trying to think of knowing what the goals are here, and that we may even agree on. Look, we all want affordable housing. We also know that it is Lincoln Center, one of the premier places in New York City, in which a lot has happened that was not so wonderful. And that is because this community board just had a presentation from Lincoln Center about what I certainly hope will be a wonderful use of the part of Lincoln Center that has been just vacant, and we know about the rest of
Yeah.
the history. So I'm just trying to say, and I'm not a pie in the sky, but you can hear it, that I'd like to try to find a way that we can, either with better communication with the developer, with another way to find a way in the calendar year for us to do something that would come close to a couple of our wishes, goals, without being dose.
Shall we maybe pause and hear from the developer? That sounds-
Please.
Yeah.
Sure.
The floor is yours. Thank you for coming.
Right, stuck.
Yeah, we can.
You can-
Give you some
We'll
space.
give you one.
Ethel,
Yeah.
another 5 years together and we'll be able to have pie in the sky.
Oh, from your,
A long time,
terrific.
30 years.
Well, I'm old, but you know, you gotta,
Hey,
okay,
it's 120.
okay.
Look, I'm here. I think I was here about a year ago, or I don't know how long ago it was when we were chatting a bit. I asked to come here and to speak a little bit because I've kind of been hearing rumors and secondhand statements that some people have been spreading about me and saying that I'm anti-affordable, I don't like poor people, and it's extremely upsetting for me to hear that kind of talk. It's completely untrue. I grew up in the Lower East Side, one of 12. We were poor. My father was a teaching rabbi. My mother was a teacher. They struggled to put food on the table for many years. And I haven't forgotten my roots. And I hate to hear something like that. And we have built, and again, we're certainly primarily profit motivated. We're not gonna say anything else besides that. But we've built over 500 units of affordable housing, some of them in the Upper West Side. To my knowledge, not according to a list that I've seen, the amount of affordable housing built in this district in the last year is 0. There's only one other district in the city that has 0 affordable housing going on. So you have to ask yourself that question as to why. And it's not just about Manhattan, because there are other Manhattan districts that have, done hundreds of affordable housing. Just to give a background, and that goes back to when we did the building on 66th Street. Landmarks West saw fit to challenge it in court. They ran us through court, lost at every turn, cost us 2 years, tens of millions of dollars that could have been better spent on something else, affordable housing, for example. But there was no outreach to say, let's see if we can do a deal. And despite our having done a large rezoning on Riverside South, which the community supported, the council person at the time supported, same council person, by the way, was a negotiated process. It got done. A lot of affordable housing came out of that. Community benefits came out of that. There was no outreach to us at all. We just woke up one day and said, oh, Landmarks West is going for a text amendment, and with a lot of misinformation. We went through that. They were showing 1,500-foot tall buildings, 2 of them or 3 of them on the site, showing what would happen if it was the text amendment went through, much lower height than we would actually have built, because we would have built something similar to what we did on 66th Street. Even if there was just a bulk packing, it would be a massive wall of a building, because there was no other way. So I reached out multiple times to the council person here to say, let's see if we can do something that will suit everybody, and we don't need to get into a battle of it. In fact, they had a hard time getting through. We had some meetings, follow up, really didn't there wasn't much follow-up. And as recently as when the community board met and said that actually would be open to height, more slender building. And it was, no matter what happened, under the city of Yes now, you'd have had a wall of 900 foot tall, but a massive 300 foot tall long or 400 foot long building. So this was preferable. And I again reached out and said, okay, so let's talk about what kind of affordable you'd like. And still have not heard back on that. Partly, there was an opportunity at one point to buy a building on 65th Street, which was on the market. Most of the units were market rate. It was the old, Toro was having that as a dormitory for a while. And I wanted to buy that. I said, tell me, this is an opportunity. It's 2 blocks away. It's in the neighborhood. It's not, not like we're building somewhere else. It's not on site, but could have contributed, I think, somewhere maybe 100 units plus. Mostly would have been market rate going to affordable. There would be some stabilized units here that would stay permanently stabilized. Again, no discussion. So I'm here because, it's getting later and later. We have to, design our buildings. I think at this point, we don't owe anything in terms of building affordability or not building affordability. We've tried and reached out multiple times, and I'm here finally to say, look, we do have 2 buildings on site that we're prepared. One is a building site, one is an existing building to dedicate towards affordable. And it's not 20% of the FAR. There's no way we can just give away 20% of the FAR, but it's, over 100,000 feet probably, enough to build over 100 units of affordable. I don't know exactly, and again, it depends on what the mix is. That's something I would like to hear from the community. What is the mix? Remember, we're not locked into an economic, I think councilperson mentioned to me at one point, maybe do work.
She's here now, so
Oh,
maybe this is.
okay.
Just arriving. Just arriving.
Okay, anyhow, maybe do workforce housing, because this is a negotiated agreement, so we can build exactly what we want and what the community wants to see, whether it's special workforce housing, whether it's geared towards the elderly, whether it's all community-based. So if it's a lottery system, you get 25% preference to the community, but that's it. This could be something where it's 100% preference, right? Because it is a negotiated agreement. We're still prepared to do that, even though I think, and we've heard from city planning, that there is no way that any amendments or anything like that would force us to do affordability. We're still prepared to do it, because I'm not opposed. This is a chance to do something good. Would I do it on my own if I didn't have some ulterior motives? No, I wouldn't. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm gonna, out of charity, take 100,000 square feet of super valuable real estate and give it away. And you guys are at risk of my saying, okay, the heck with it. But what I'm getting out of it really, and it's not make or break, is just peace. I'm not interested in a fight. God willing, we have enough to build here that will be good. Hopefully we'll do well. I just don't need it. It's not, we fought the last battle. We won the last battle. Well, God willing, we'll win this one too if we have to do it, right? But I just rather not, when there's, I think, enough on the table, voluntarily enough on the table to get a lot of good done here, and a lot of good done for the community, for the local community, because it's a negotiated process. So I want somebody on the other side to sit down and talk to us and give us input, and let's get to an arrangement that everybody's happy with.
I think we are all here, and many of us have heard this for the first time, and that's terrific.
Well, that's been the message I've been sending for the last 2 years at least.
Could you please explain or detail, and when you mentioned, I think, 100,000 square feet, may be willing to dedicate to as many as 100 affordable units. That's 1,000 square feet each. That's not on the average very big affordable units
Oh,
for
yeah.
families, but in any event.
It actually is.
Well, in any event, I'm lucky enough to have more. But anyway, can you, what building, you said one would be a new building, one existing, where are you
So
talking
we have
about?
an existing building on
Okay.
66th Street,
Which
which
is
is less, I think, a 7-story building. It's a landmark building, which
Which
we would,
is- the address?
oh, what's the address?
7 West 66.
7 West 66. So that is a beautiful address.
Okay.
Okay, and that's when we've actually put some plans together for what that might look. And then on 67th Street, we're, you know, that ugly building that's on 67th Street, that's part of the Disney, I don't know, that's where the loading docks and stuff was. We would tear that building down and we would build a new building in keeping with the neighborhood around the same heights, because it's a landmark district. And put affordable housing in that building.
As part of that.
It would be all affordable.
Oh, a totally affordable building, a separate building there, and then on the 65th Street one, I think you said.
66.
So the one you already own, the other one?
No, 65th. Yeah, 66 is one we already own. 65th is one that I wanted to buy.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know what happened to it. It may have sold.
So that's part of, I mean, the details are helpful to me anyway. That one would be part of 100,000 square feet, but it's no longer probably
No.
available to you.
No.
Oh, no.
The 100,000 is just on site.
Okay,
Councilperson
Oh, got
made a
it.
big point about wanting it on site.
I see. Yeah.
So it'd just be on site, 2 buildings on site.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. Shelley.
2 buildings off-site?
Seema, Shelley.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have special interest here other than, but I think it's consistent with the board's interest. We have thousands of people on waiting lists for senior housing. West Side Federation of Seniors, 4,000. And to think of even 25 apartments, you know, anyone who thinks that 1,000 square feet for supported housing is not a lot, it is.
Oh, just part of the family. not
No,
so
but
much, anyway.
we actually have a layout, tentative layout for
Mhm.
one of the buildings. I think to do over 100 units. They're small, the studios, but they're not tiny. They're
Right.
nice sized studios,
It's
which could have, you know, some amenities and could have it would be for seniors, right? For support of seniors. And again, the nice thing about that is that it's brand new and it can have some support facilities. And it could be only for people in the neighborhood or in the community board. I think that's because we're not doing it under some program that forces, you know, a lottery
That's
that
interesting.
is citywide.
That would be very interesting because that's always, it used to be 49%. And now we have no preference very often. We have, by the way, there are two new buildings coming up. One on 85th Street and one on 108th Street. So there will be, the zero will go up. But the fact is that that the community preference has been wiped out. And that's been very hurtful to people in the community who said something's new coming, like 300 units on 108th Street, which
Right.
was done, and no guarantee that our local people. are getting it.
Right. And 108
That's
is
big.
not really in the same neighborhood.
Well, it's not, but it's
the same
gorgeous
community.
building and.
No,
people-
no, it's all great. It's all great. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, of course not, of course not.
We were talking earlier and we had passed a resolution broadly saying that a upzoning would be interesting to us. We've heard from DCP that that's something that for a wide variety of reasons is something they can't carry. We internally don't have the funding to do it ourselves, right? We spend some money on some things that maybe we shouldn't have. I'm curious if you would be interested in bringing a map amendment.
No.
Okay.
The site is large enough, the buildings are large enough. It's big enough and they would take years. And at the end of the day, it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Beverly?
Yeah, just in terms of the process, perhaps we don't see it quite the same way that you do. We were working really forward with you into the fall and expected to hear back after the holidays for you. And we weren't able to reconvene. I'm not sure what went into that, but understand that we've been a little bit stymied because we were really in a four-way negotiation. We have city planning, we have the council member, we have you, and there's us. And to try to get everyone thinking along the same lines has been extraordinarily difficult. And I'm happy.
Beverly, that's why I didn't get back to you, because I didn't know what to get back to you with. So.
Right, and we
there's a-
didn't know until very recently what city planning's preferences were. That's really something that's only emerged within the last several months. So we did pass the resolution last month in a way as an effort to jumpstart this again. And I think that's really where this group who's assembled tonight wants to go. So we wanted to stress our interest in affordable housing, our sense that the earlier ULURP we were party to is not necessarily what we would agree is our bottom line, and that height was not something that we viewed as negatively as perhaps when we met earlier. So our resolution was really intended to make those points to you as well as to others in the community. So I certainly welcome the offer that you're making, and we have to figure out how to structure something that engages all four parties in a way that allows for a cohesive discussion. And that's what we've been struggling with.
Yeah, well, so that's a great idea, and that resolution worked, because here we are. And so, no, it is, because now, I feel like, we have a basic possibility for a win-win here now, right? Because as long as Landmarks West was calling the shots and chop, 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 there was no way. And these are the guys that fought us for 2 years. But now that I see that there's a willingness to actually work on a realistic plan that we can go along with, yes, we'll have to contribute, but so we're here. And I think the way to do this, first of all, just in terms of structure, in order to assure you, I mean, a lot of you know me for many, many years.
Many.
And thank God. And know that we keep our word. If we say we're gonna do something, we do something, but beyond that, this can be structured as a private agreement where we enter into a contractual arrangement with an affordable housing provider, because we're not gonna run it ourselves, so there'll be somebody else that runs this housing. Whether it's a senior group or some other affordable housing group, and we don't have to choose them. It could be somebody then that the community agrees with. We would enter into a binding agreement to provide them with this land, this building, these buildings, and so there'd be no way we could break that contract. So I think that's an easy way to structure it, and something which you can be sure of. But what I would recommend, if we're really gonna move forward, is for the community board, the council member, to form a working group and to sit down with us and give us your ideas. We'll show you what we're thinking of, and hopefully put something together that everybody is in agreement on, and we can all move forwards. And that's, we don't want, a lot of pressure on what we're building. We want this to be kind of, here's what we'd like to get from the affordable housing side. And we'll show you what we're offering and what we can give. And hopefully that will be sufficient for the community to say, hey, these are really substantial benefits. It's not 20% of FAR, but it's probably 20% of the units by mix or more. And let's get something done that could get done. And we're doing this voluntarily, because I really don't think at this point that we have to do it. I think we have to move forward and get our building built before anything really could happen that would stop it. Anything that the community would want to get done to stop it. So we're here voluntarily. We're here because I do believe in affordable. I do think we can afford it in this deal, you know, with some help. And so, you know, we're ready to move forward.
Okay, thank you. So something, actually more than one thing is still confusing me, but the question I'm gonna ask. So as you've said, you could build whatever you can build at the site as of right now. You have no obligation to build affordable housing. You're not interested in R11 or R12. So my question is, in a general way, or to whatever extent you can tell us today, other than the goodwill of the community, what are you looking for by way of quid pro quo for what might be as much as 100,000 square feet of not required other than by special
We're looking for
affordable housing?
we're looking for nothing else. We're just gonna wanna look into what kind of subsidies might be available for buildings. It's gonna be expensive to build. The land is expensive. We're giving up, I mean, listen, really, it shouldn't be done here. The off-site would have been the most logical thing to do. Buying up existing buildings that are free market, turning them affordable like they wanna do, that's the most logical thing. It's the lowest cost. It makes the most sense.
I had a shit fit.
But we have council. Exactly. Said very elegantly. So that's why we're doing it here. But that's it. Basically, we're gonna see what we can get to help defray this cost, but there's nothing else. There's no other quid pro quos for us. We're not asking for anything more. This is a big enough site. We're happy with it. It's big enough even for us. So we just want to move forward.
Can you define slightly more what you believe might be available to help defray the cost?
I don't know, actually. Probably there are some subsidies, I don't know, tax, at least a tax abatement on the affordable, for example.
I think I don't know how much the 485X is gonna work, and also we can try for some vouchers.
Okay, that's perfect.
We're glad to do that.
But this is something that we have to work together to figure out what should we build?
We want 30% though.
Yeah. That's the problem. Okay, but that's
And
not
you
gonna
stand
happen.
with her, because
It's not
nobody's
happening.
running against her. You've got
It's
Gail.
not happening.
New York.
Has had Gail for a long time.
Gail, do you wanna?
I
Give us your thoughts.
appreciate, first of all, I appreciate everyone being here, and that makes a huge difference, everybody, city
Absolutely
planning,
does, yeah.
developer, and all of you in the room. I think that, Gary Brown has been, great to work with. I've been doing it for a very long time with him. But the issue for us is we need some senior, we need some family, because the schools are desperate for students, let me be clear. So we need, a combination. And I think, to the credit of the community board, height is not as much of an issue as it has been in the past, but affordable housing is definitely needed. So the question is how much we can get on the affordable side, working on the opportunity for funding, either Section 8, which is hard to come by, but hopefully some vouchers, and perhaps a tax abatement. And then find a nonprofit to run it. But we do need as many units as we can possibly get, and that still has to be negotiated, and how we make them permanent. Obviously, you have a voucher is permanent, if we have a Section 8 on-site is permanent, and the tax abatement is 40 years. I don't know what happens after that. So these are all things that have to be discussed.
Indeed.
But
Yeah,
I'd
have
like
we
to
had
try to
any
get a
nibbles
little
from
bit- what?
nonprofit? Have we had any nibbles from nonprofits, or is it?
We,
too soon to
nonprofit,
know?
we'll do it in a second. We have many in the neighborhood that would be fabulous. That's the least of our problems.
Mhm.
The problem is to get enough units and to have them subsidized in some way, because otherwise the market's gonna have.
Well,
to-
and also
MIH.
you have to be blunt, you have to decide who, you know, if there's a neighborhood preference for the whole thing.
Right.
So that's, you know, that's what you gotta decide.
Right.
And also, you know, I can tell you, because we have affordable houses, we've built over 500.
I think some little pressure to do so, if I remember correctly.
No, not just pressure, the benefits.
Whoever-
We got
Riverside
benefits from it.
Center was pressured, yeah.
Well, the Riverside, yes,
Pressure,
you gave,
yeah.
you gave
We
us a
got
hard
500
time.
units.
Yes.
1159,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, but not anymore. Where are they? What have you done lately, Gail?
I know, I feel terrible. Terrible.
That's why I'm here, to
Ah,
help you
yeah,
out,
to help us out. Thank you, Gary.
up to a point, up to a point.
Well,
But anyhow,
Yeah, I just want to say, I think my feeling here is that this is refreshing, okay? It's direct. And that very appreciative that you came this evening so people could hear, you know, I don't like to use the expression the horse's mouth, but from the source, because when there isn't direct communication, then there is their words said and suspicion and accusations which apparently are not that valid. And so I think this is very valuable. We came tonight, and I'm sure everyone agrees that we're very appreciative, and it's going to lead to something good.
I hope so.
From city planning, how does the restrictive deck work?
Okay, well, let's go to that. But I do want to say that a covenant, an agreement between what Extel is assuring the community, and I would have to identify the right party for that. City planning is not part of that covenant.
Right.
So we should defer to the parties who would be to talk about it. But I do want to say that there are models for it, and there are while we're not party to it, if you can get to an agreement and feel security through that agreement. I mean, I want to just say, I think this has been a very encouraging conversation because, I think Beverly, you said earlier, city planning's preference, it's not so much a preference, it's really a it is maybe, if I dare say, advice or a preference. If this agreement can be made, that's pretty fantastic because this site is uniquely large. It is uniquely large and can deliver a lot. And you're talking about affordable housing and may have some specifics that the community is looking for more that MIH or another program cannot deliver.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit, it's unusual for me to say this because I'm promoting a process that's outside of what city planning does, but I think it's very encouraging what I'm hearing tonight.
Take yes for an answer, in other words, right? So you mentioned that there are models that you know of. Are there particular models that you would direct us to that are a good framework for this kind of agreement?
I can do some research, but I also defer to I don't know if
No,
your team
this-
can talk to about things that you've done in the past.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a hard thing to
Not
do
unusual.
because you have the affordable housing managers, right? And they are a non-profit, but they're a non-governmental entity. So they can enter into contracts, binding contracts with us, which we would do. And so it's enforceable in court. Like there's no way we're not gonna whatever we agree, we're gonna do. But there's no way we can violate it, even if we wanted to, once we enter into that contract. I don't see why it's a problem. There's no restrictive decks needed, there's no nothing needed, because it's a binding contract.
This is, of course, terrific, because to have you in this room and to have Edith and Gail, I'm not a Pollyanna, but these are the people that the community board wants and needs, and to be able to talk. If I may say, the community board asked me to do a presentation on some of the big projects that I had worked with, and I gave one that I'm sorry to say, I gave the title of 40 years, a 40-year story.
That's 40 years.
Yeah, and I have it in a PowerPoint that the people here, I think Seema asked me, and it was terrific, to show the whole thing of the Argentinians and then Trump and at the end, you and, going on in the southern part. So this is something of great importance, and the world is different. But what's not different is the essential hope and need and skill that city planning in her role, you in the important role, the council member above all, and the community board. And I just feel that, and I'm so glad, the community board, I think we should arrange as soon as possible, and the summer is coming or whatever, to get together, to work and do it, and not only do what we think we know needs, but to be a little initiative and a little ingenious within the group. To think, because we'd be in the same room. I mean, I'm saying metaphorically.
Well, we're waiting for feedback and waiting to sit down with whoever everybody decides to come to a decision, come to a design so that we can move forward, because we are
Yes.
designing this building. I told Yehuda, who's in charge of the project, we're just designing a building that could be affordable if it so happens on 67. It's a brand new building. We could put a very nice market rate building there and, you know, and do very well with it. But we were designing a building, so we have something designed, because we have to be able to show landmark something, right? We gotta be able to build something there. So we're moving ahead. If you guys come in, you know, there can be input. If you don't, you'll wind up with what we are putting in, which is, I think, a very nice building and could be affordable, or it could just be market rate studios, which, you know what, if nothing happens, that's what it'll turn into.
That's so good. Yeah. Okay,
Sorry, how
Tibita,
about Richard and then,
sorry.
and then Beverly?
Richard.
Gary, how advanced is the design for the building that be affordable? Is it something you can share with us?
We just did a blocking diagram right now. There's no design on the facade. So, you know, but of course, you know,
Whatever you
we'll
have.
show you what we have.
Yeah.
But there's, you know, it's very early days for that, and can certainly be changed. I like about it is that you get a lot of units there, and it's perfect for, you know, for elderly, and I kind of don't want to impact the neighborhood too much. The other building on 66 is a little bit larger units, 1 and 2 bedrooms mostly, and some studios. But if the community says, look, we want to have families, for example, and we want larger units, we can design it that way up to a point. You'll have less units.
Would it make sense to say that everybody here to commit to meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks? And for Beverly to appoint or Beverly and the chairs to appoint a working group to sit down with you and get back on track?
I think council member is on board with that. We're fine with it. It's up to her.
I'm
Gail?
glad to do it, I just 30%.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sit down. If that's the starting point, I'm
just
sitting
thinking,
down.
how about if we could get some subsidy though? Because I think that.
No, I can't do it. You got the most valuable real estate in the neighborhood. Why are we building affordable with that? You know, even what we're doing on site in a way doesn't make sense, because you could take this money and subsidize many more units off site. But
Well,
I'm happy to do it.
but maybe if we can
We
get
gotta be
some,
realistic.
let's try to get some subsidy and then see, somewhere between 20 and 30.
Well, regardless of the
subsidy.
merits of our respective positions, does it make sense to try to meet within the next couple of weeks? Small group of us and Gail and Gary and
Absolutely. We'll undertake to try to reach out and organize that, Richard.
okay.
Let us know.
Beverly, you had a question as well?
I wanted to ask Gary, we've heard from Edith about the planned text amendment that city planning is working on for the site. Have you done any rough work on what the tower that you want to build would look like within those constraints?
I think we have looked at what we could build under that text amendment, and what you would get is what we showed last time, and I think that would help us out 650.
We were at in the 600s, but with City of Yes, it would be closer to 800 feet.
Right, so that's the thing, because of City of Yes, it actually would be taller. So you would have a wall, instead of a wall 650 feet tall, it'd be a wall probably of 800 feet tall, because remember, we have to maximize the height in order to have the maximum views. So, I mean, I would hate to be forced to do that. Would be really, really ugly. But yeah, we did look at it, but I think it would be horrible, because why would you want to do that when you could build a building a bit taller that's so much less impact on the neighborhood? There's no benefit that way.
Sorry, were you talking about under the text amendment
Yeah.
that DCP is planning, or the one we proposed?
Even the one you proposed, because on the city of Yes, that very same thing you proposed gets even taller.
Yeah.
So it just makes no sense.
We understood that what city planning is doing impacts the massing of the bulk, and wondered what that looked like
Would be
in
the same
terms of
thing,
height.
only- No, it would be the same thing, only there are no height limitations, so it could get even taller. So, but we were going under the text amendment, which city planning is using, and that's where it would be, I don't know, maybe 800 feet tall on the city of Yes. But if the city planning did its text amendment, there would be no height limit. It would just be a packing, and it could get even taller, because we make our ceiling heights even higher in order to get tall.
But it would
I'm gonna-
require the 60% under 150 feet.
Yes, it would. A portion of it would, but the rest of it would push the building, very high.
I'm gonna throw something out there, is that if there is an agreement between parties that everyone is satisfied with, we may not have to proceed with the text amendment. Right, because it sounds like the height, there's receptivity to height because of the trade-off, to get affordable housing, which is terrific. So I think we should see how the next several weeks roll out, because the text amendment could be moot, right? So
If, depending on the process.
exactly.
But it makes sense to move it, because under the text amendment, what you wind up with is height anyhow, a horrible building, kind of darkening the whole neighborhood, and you get no affordable. So like, why would anybody want to do that?
Yeah, the things I had added, I had talked about at the beginning of the meeting, was that our text amendment would introduce a street wall requirement in a base.
Yeah. we know
So,
that.
but otherwise
we assume that.
it's basically,
But we're gonna do that anyhow.
well, that's
We're
terrific.
planning
So if
to-
that you're gonna do that, then
Right.
maybe the text is moot, but we'll see how the next, several weeks roll out.
Okay. That's why it's good to have everyone in the room.
Indeed.
Richard wants to say something.
Yeah, just given the fact that we're free to design our own building, or you're free to design your own building if we reach an agreement. I think it would be helpful to get the benefit of your current thinking. What is your wish list for the building at present that you're willing, if we agree to it, then you would agree to the affordable housing? What's the trade-off?
There's no trade-off. We're gonna build as of right.
To avoid a text amendment, what is
There's
it?
no
What
trade-off.
would you, what
This-
building will result if we don't have a text amendment, is what I'm asking.
Oh, we kind of showed you, I think we showed you a rendering maybe of what we were planning to do.
Yeah.
Was that-
But right now.
Nothing's
right
changed
now-
since then?
No, nothing's changed, except that
Okay.
we've kind of heard the 1,200 foot tall building. That's what we're planning to. We're not, originally the building was somewhat taller than that, but we've lowered it. We are, in order to fit in all the FAR, we're planning a smaller building to the east, so something in the 350 foot range. And that's it. Other than that, nothing.
So that's the building that at our update meeting.
We could technically put that smaller building to the east on top of the 1,200 foot building and do a 1,500 foot tall building, right? Technically, we could do that. And we built a 1,500 foot tall building before on Central Park Tower. But we're not planning to do that. This is what we're planning to do.
Not a good idea, yeah.
Okay.
What about the basketball court?
I'll play you first.
Tonight.
Get into the garden
I know,
There you go.
I thought it was gonna be a community board office, but
In the
I
garden
know.
court.
Forget the Knicks. I know.
Yeah, it would be funny enough, exactly.
I don't want the basketball court. We'll have to talk about that.
Hey,
We mentioned the basketball before you.
Sometimes when you talk for too long, things go down.
Oh.
So let's keep it.
this is, let's
Good at
stop
that.
it now.
Speaking of the Knicks game, they play at 8.
Oh, yes, yes, yeah.
Thank you for
Okay.
saying that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you
much.
so
Thank
much.
you for
Thank you for
inviting me.
coming.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Edie.
Thank you so much.
Good to see you.
To our next
Thank you so much. So good to see you. Really, it's terrific.
I can talk with you.
not me. Mr. Mendo, I think we just need 1 minute.
If you smart,
to transition,
but
and then
be
we'll be ready
smart
for
too.
you. Sorry to keep you waiting.
It's okay.
More familiar. Oh, yeah. 100%. Why? I understand.
If you wanna go, you should go.
I'm gonna be available, but more.
I'm gonna awkward my first
Absolutely, in terms of.
This is the most amazing.
Everyone, thank you. Okay, we are ready for you. Okay, so this is our second item, which is about the Belnord retail space just across the street, actually. Take it
Hi,
away,
everyone.
please.
Can you hear me?
Speaking.
Yes.
Yep. Perfect. Hi, my name is Ron Mandel. Good evening. So our office represents the owner of the commercial unit at the Belnord. I'm here to discuss the ground floor space at the southwest corner of Broadway and West 86th Street. The applicant is proposing to authorize a bank in the vacant space. The zoning resolution prohibits occupancy by a bank if the bank's frontage is greater than 25 feet, unless a zoning authorization is issued. You may recall that this is now the second time this matters before the board. The community board had previously heard the matter and unanimously recommended its support. City planning approved the application in March 2025. Fast forward to now May. The architect was preparing drawings, and the team realized that the frontage along Broadway is actually 55 feet 7 inches versus what was approved at 46 feet 3 inches. And so we resubmitted the revised plan to show that delta, the difference in the space. Basically, what happened was that the architect missed one of the column widths in the building. The actual vacant space has not changed. It's sandwiched between West 86th Street and Starbucks space. That's what happened. And so we submitted the updated plan. I could show you on the screen the difference, like that one column space, if I can share my screen, if you want me to.
Yes,
That's really it in a nutshell in terms of what the proposal is. Nothing else has changed. Unfortunately, the process is the process. It's been now almost 2 years plus since we started this. And so we're hoping to, have it hopefully wrapped up and reflect the actual conditions at street level.
Can we see that?
We can't see it.
Yeah, I'm gonna share. Let me see if I can share it. 1 sec. Share is here.
You know, if you want. Okay, thank
Give me
you.
1 sec. Sorry. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So I hope you see my screen now. So I basically zoomed in to the portion that's applicable here. The green space. Here's the green space at the corner. So it's 55 feet 7 inches. And the only difference in the application was this. Before was 46 feet 3 inches. So they missed this column right here. That's it. So basically this green line extends this way, and it's reflected in this drawing on the left, which is the correct drawing. Again, the Starbucks space is remaining the same. It's just that street frontage now, the drawing now shows the right measurement.
Okay.
Gail?
Can I ask
Well,
just
go
one
ahead,
quick
let-
question? So I noticed someplace in your application, you talked about needing to add an egress on Broadway. Is that the case? And how is that going through landmarks and all of that stuff?
Oh, no, no. What makes this building, listen, it's a gorgeous building. What makes it
Yeah.
unique is that it can't be subdivided along Broadway. It's not practical to divide up the space even smaller along Broadway because we can't create another means of egress along Broadway. It's going to change the look of the building. The point we just made and city planning, was understood was that basically we're just trying to justify the fact that the space as it currently exists will remain as it exists today. If we had to chop the space up into more, units, it would change the look of Belnord along Broadway.
Got it.
There's no changes to the egress. The windows are staying the same. The facade is staying the same. That's it.
May I ask Gail, because I vividly remember your own testimony
Yeah,
and
no,
your
what-
concern about it.
There's a law, and the law says 25 feet.
Exactly.
Okay, so when we talked, I mean, it's because banks produce dead space. If you just go to 87th Street and you see TD Bank, it's horrible. So the question here, I don't know which bank, I know it's not Chase, but I don't know who it is, would be, and we talked about it, there are now banks doing major art shows, or they're doing dance shows, or they have even a cafe. I don't know if you've been to the one that has a cafe. It's fabulous. I mean, it's activity.
Right.
So I would love to get some ideas from this group about what we would mandate if you're gonna break the law, which is what they're doing. Then how are you gonna make this space so it's not dead? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think that we should be talking about it. We're giving them, a lot. We're giving them a breakage of the law. And then everybody else is gonna wanna do the same thing up and down Broadway.
Right.
And before you know it, you're gonna have a lot of dead space.
Right.
So the question is, what is the ideas? I love that cafe.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yes. Shelley and
Yeah.
Klari.
In addition to the cafe, bank could sponsor, as others do, financial literacy for people in the community.
Yeah, but that doesn't change the look of the bank.
The look of the
I'm
bank.
looking for streetscape activity. They all do that, with all due respect.
Well, I
They
don't,
do, they all do it.
Okay.
I'm looking for streetscape changes that would be,
Kate, what about some gardening, floral and other?
I don't know, I'm looking for ideas.
Yeah, that's something that is very doable.
Klari.
A question for Ron. Ron, is there a bank with which the landlord has a lease, and how long is that lease?
So the owners lost, several opportunities over the last 2+ years. They're now close, very close to identifying a tenant. It's not 100% yet. I think if I may address the issue that, councilperson brought up and members of the community, listen, at the end of the day, ownership believes that the idea of the space available to the community will benefit the bank and the community. Again, the idea is that this is a local bank, it's going to serve the local community. And to that extent, applicant is glad to connect the community board or its rep or a working group with the bank once they've gone further in the process, with the bank. It's, as I'm sure you can appreciate, it's hard to commit to a plan now, not knowing what's going to work for the bank. Tibita pointed out to me in the email herself that the space has to be feasible for commercial use, right? I mean, so we can't commit to, I'm exaggerating here, but for, half the space to be a dance studio, right? Because we don't know what's going to work for the bank. But to the extent that we can connect the bank at the right time with the community board, or again, a working group to figure out a way to make this work, applicant is more than happy to do that. An idea that came up that I discussed with the applicant was the idea of, at least temporarily, if the community board is interested, the applicant can work with the community board, maybe even like a month-to-month basis for now until the tenancy is further progressed, and providing some space in the windows for display of artwork. Again, subject to the condo board approving it, But, working with the community for at least some temporary installation space in the windows.
But when the bank comes, we also need the temporary space for the artwork.
That's what you're
Yeah,
gonna say.
I would love obviously to commit to that, right? But we don't know yet, right? We can't kind of give away what we don't even have yet from the bank. It's been vacant for 10 years.
I know, because
I totally, listen, I understood the logic behind the text amendment when it was proposed years ago. I totally appreciate it. I think, again, my personal take is that I think the world has changed a lot in the last several years. Unfortunately, my perspective is that the law is not being broken for this application. There's a process. The authorization says if there's vacancies in the area, a lot of vacancies, then you can apply for an authorization. To be honest, there's a lot of vacancies in that area, a lot.
Yes.
And it's been, and the street front has been, it's different today than it was pre-COVID. It's not easy to find a commercial tenant, particularly along this street front. I wish it was easier. As a New Yorker myself, I think it's sad that we can't activate more of these spaces, but the authorization exists because there's vacancy. So we submitted a study showing that there are vacancies, more vacancy than the city had hoped for. And so, in light of the vacancy, we're trying to activate the street front. I think that activating this corner will help bring other tenants to the area. You bring like the broker's thought is always like, when one tenant brings another tenant, right? That's kind of the way real estate works, especially along Broadway. The idea is to activate the space. And again, to the extent we can help the bank support the community, which the bank would want, we're happy to do that. This temporary idea, I think it's a good idea personally. Again, we have to figure out logistics in terms of how we manage it, who's gonna, be involved in the process, but let's have that conversation and figure it out.
Excuse me, are you, sir, I couldn't see that. Are you saying that if the board would agree to a certain amount of space within the authorized space for different visual uses, whether it's art or whatever, that would be a process and one that you and the clients would be willing at least to entertain with some specific time frame and so on?
I can't, nor could the unit owner can't commit to a plan moving forward once the tenant's in place. We don't know yet what the tenant needs, how we can balance the tenant's needs with this, community space. I'm hopeful it could be done. I would think that a business that's moving to the neighborhood wants to make the neighborhood happy. So what I'm suggesting is that I can bridge the parties together at the right time. What we're suggesting is that more immediately, we work to figure out some kind of temporary installation space along, in the windows. We were not offering that the community can basically like walk into the space and do it as it sees fit. But the idea that we can figure out ways to basically maybe put artwork in the windows, and so that at least the community could enjoy temporarily the window space, which is currently vacant. Let's make it look pretty in the meantime. Let's activate that space.
There's Louisa.
That's not it.
Yeah, I think we can think of what's before us tonight as either a minor insignificant modification to what we previously approved when it was 46 feet or whatever, as opposed to 50, whatever.
53.
Or we can think of it as a second chance to rethink what we did the last time and say, maybe we don't want a bank there. But either way, I think, number one, what we're looking at is not knowing which bank, not knowing for sure that there would be any bank because there's no lease. I don't think Ron would be comfortable And maybe we shouldn't even ask him to tell us what bank they're close with right now. And we're not gonna find out how long the lease would be if this bank with which they are close signs a lease. So there's a lot we don't know about it. But I also think that we neither legally nor practically can tie our decision tonight to anything about the bank, whatever it might be, choosing to donate some of its space or use some of its space for some non-banking use. I mean, wonderful though that might be, and I don't know which cafe this is, like dying to go there now, Gail.
Oh, it's fabulous.
Where is it?
Oh, it is.
Columbus
60
Circle, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
61st and
Dying to
Broadway.
go see that one.
Packed.
But I
You
don't,
can't even-
I don't think we can tie whatever we do, in particular in our time frame, to whatever that might turn out to be.
Louisa?
You said most what I was thinking, but I think it's too early in the process. There were too many unknowns that we can't make a decision on, not knowing what bank. I mean, certainly if banks can wall off areas for ATMs all the time, they certainly could for some kind of permanent art space.
But then why are they leasing such a big space if they're gonna not do a banking use?
Well, they're saying it's a bank. Because it's a big space, maybe we could have some of that space. But we don't know yet, is what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you. And that
I think
we can't make any decision at this point.
Yeah.
Is there a
Question
question?
I honestly don't know the answer to.
Please.
If they make an agreement with the bank and there's no provision for our space, whatever space we want, they have a lease with the bank. The bank has no reason later on to
Exactly.
accommodate us.
Yes,
Is that true?
Yeah.
that's true.
And I would think also we would have to have some kind of agreement that, you know, as Gail says, if they start now, they could do it.
We can start
place
now,
on Broadway.
Shoshama, you know Shoshama, somebody knows Shoshama?
Yes.
They're at, and they could go in tomorrow, so I'm glad to hear that, so we could make that arrangement. They have art, they have everything. And Shoshama would be delighted, I think, at least now, to go in, with some art. And then see how that goes, because if it's successful, maybe the bank would wanna continue working with them, I don't know.
So we
Local high
could make-
schools or,
We can
Shoshama's
make,
great.
we can make our approval subject to the use of the space.
Right.
Temporarily, you mean, or permanently?
Permanently.
Richard?
I don't
it
think
has
we
to
can.
be permanent space.
Immediately
Why
and
not?
ongoing.
Richard, go ahead. And then Adam next.
I voted along with everybody else to approve the use of the space for a bank 2 years ago because I recognize that the space had been vacant for a long time, but I'm having second thoughts about it. I am bemused by the argument that that splitting the space up and making a second entrance would somehow ruin the facade of the Belnord. And this is a building that housed PC Richards and all of its landing docks and everything else. And there didn't seem to be much concern for the way the Broadway facade looked.
But Richard, they didn't
Project.
divide up the space for that. That was an.
They didn't divide up the space, but
That was a
but
big
P.T.
tenant.
Richards is not, I can't think, if you're concerned about aesthetics, I can't think of a less aesthetic use than PC Richards, particularly not just on Broadway, but on 87th Street and on Amsterdam Avenue. It was an eyesore. And apparently the building or the condo that owns the ground floor had no problem with that. I think that, I don't know whether it makes sense to divide up the space into two units, but I don't buy the notion that it is aesthetically unattractive. I also agree with Louisa that this is premature. Normally, we get applications for sidewalk cafes, for this, for that, or the other thing, and we know what is going to be in the space that we're approving. Here, we're buying a pig in a poke, and the developer can rent to a bank that can refuse to do anything for the community. The appropriate way to proceed for me is for the developer to get a little bit further along in negotiating with the bank, and to come back to us and negotiate a non-bank use, which would supplement the bank use, and then we can vote and approve it. Before that, I would vote to disapprove.
And one we can bank on.
Oh.
Yeah, I remember voting for this last year. It was my first board meeting. We voted unanimously in favor of it. All that has changed in 11 months is that an architect realized that the interior wall and the exterior column didn't line up, and it's been vacant for another 11 months. I think it's kind of ridiculous that we're trying to put all of these preconditions on something that we adopted unanimously 11 months ago. I think it's like malpractice for us to all of a sudden change our mind. And frankly, like, no matter what we do, like CPC was going to approve it last time, they're going to do it again. I don't understand why we are trying to do all this, in my opinion, genuinely nonsense, since we unanimously approved this 11 months ago.
If I can just jump in, I think it's malpractice for us not to reconsider if we change our mind. People change their minds all the time.
If I may, so I think, just to Richard's point, I think the difference between something like this and like a sidewalk cafe application is that the process here takes too long. If it takes 2 years plus to get an approval to put a tenant in, what tenant's going to stick around for 2+ years, spend all this money not knowing what's going to happen? As it is, I mean, this condo unit owner took the risk, right, to try to, they couldn't market the space to anyone else. They tried getting the Starbucks tenant to take as much space as possible. Starbucks committed to that, this used to be, I think, a Banana Republic space. Anyway, whatever it was chopped up to pieces. They tried filling up as much as they could. This was the piece that was left over. And they spent, they spent a lot of resources to get to where we are. But I don't think it's fair to point out that this is very different than a sidewalk cafe. A sidewalk cafe application is processed in a month or two. This is a 2+ year process. No one in their right mind would commit a tenant so much in advance. And people who did commit walked away because it took so long. So I mean, I'm not blaming the community board for that. There's the process itself. But again, the authorization exists in the zoning resolution itself. It says specifically in the resolution that if you satisfy this finding, you should be able to obtain an authorization. If I may, please read it, because I think it does set the context for the discussion. It says a high ground floor vacancy rate exists within a reasonable distance of the proposed use, and such high vacancy rate is a consequence of adverse market conditions. In addition to the vacancy, within the space for nearly 10 years, and applicants attempt to market the space, there's still vacancies, not just here, but along Broadway. We did a study, and I mean, again, the community board is welcome to review the study. It's not a secret. Within the project site area that was measured, 6% of the spaces are currently vacant. And listen, I mean, again, the feedback I'm getting from people who live in the building, and I have a friend who lives in the neighborhood, is that it's really sad how it's vacant. If we have an opportunity now to capture a tenant who could help activate the Broadway streetscape and provide commercial activity, and then on top of that, hopefully, we'll work with the community. And in addition to that, the ownership is willing to have some kind of temporary installation space. Let's take advantage of that. Those are my thoughts.
Well, it's a comment I make like half the time. The perfect shouldn't be the enemy of the good. The perfect is on 61st and Broadway. It's perfect. But that's not going to happen here. And where I live further down on Broadway in the lower west 60s, the amount of vacant space is astonishing. So this is far from perfect, but at least, as he said, one tenant brings another tenant. Maybe it's the first step to revitalizing that micro area. So yeah, it's not perfect. So I'd be full systems go with this.
Thanks, Don.
I
would agree, like, I don't like having a lot of vacancies. I think, you know, for instance, walking alone at night, like, I feel less comfortable if there's ordered
Eyes on the
things.
street.
But I also say, like, the model you're talking about with this bank coming out of cafe, I'm assuming is the Capital One Cafe. That
Okay,
is
so
their
it's great.
model of business. Unless the
It's a great
Capital One
model.
Cafe is coming into this space, again, that's how they operate banks now. That's their business model. I'm sure it works for them.
There was
I don't know
another
that
bank
much.
That had cafes
Yeah,
too.
Yeah,
Orange,
there's a
like an
couple,
orange,
but that's their
orange
model.
orange.
I don't think we can get into a situation where we tell banks they can only operate in our neighborhood.
Especially when they're next door to a Starbucks.
Yeah, with cafes, like, I that's not, I don't know, I think, what I'll say is, like, I think there's a lot of banks on Broadway. I'm not that interested, frankly, from a personal aspect of having more banks on Broadway. But like, I don't think,
It's better than nothing.
I just, it seems like the space is really large and a lot of space on Broadway in particular are vacant because they're so big and they're not getting rented. And so I guess where I stand on this is I would rather there's something in the space, even again, I don't really need another bank. That's my personal opinion, but I feel like it's just gonna continue to be vacant, and on Broadway, it's really sad, I would agree, like, walking on Broadway now, a lot of it's boarded up, it's not really come back after COVID, it doesn't seem to be coming back very quickly. So yeah, I'm gonna vote in favor again, I'm not particularly interested in a bank, but I just seems like nothing else is really coming into the space, and unless Capital One wants to own a Capital One cafe here, which they don't seem interested, I don't think banking should be getting into the business of cafes.
Yeah, I agree with you two and with Adam and with Ron. I'm all for activating streetscapes here. I'm not like a great fan of banks in general, but like if you want to win the war, you have to pick your battles better. There are other better ways to activate streetscapes. And also connecting back to the big discussion about affordable housing we had earlier, if you got a mixed use building and you got a bunch of empty commercial space, that's not subsidizing the housing in that same building, that's driving the market costs up for everyone. We need this market to actually be functional, and we can't do that if people can't get in the fucking door.
Oh, okay, couple of things. Just to your comment, the ownership of the base of the building is separate from the ownership of the upper part of the building. And nobody should ever mistake the Belnord in 2025 as even luxury. It is stratospheric.
It's also the same developer, by the way, as.
But what I want to say is, and this just, you're right, the entire block has nothing on it except a dentist, I think, at the corner these days. Or something like that.
No,
Starbucks is new, yeah, sorry.
CVS is
I-
there.
They're driving each other's business.
Yeah, put sugar in it and get a double latte. But for those of us who've been on the Upper West Side some ungodly amount of time, if anybody remembers what used to be in that.
Barbershop.
There was a barber shop, there was a copy store, there was a bakery, it goes on and on. Each bay was a.
There were 8 storefronts.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You've been here as long as I have. You've been here probably. But that's what was there. So to say that each bay can't be a store is completely ridiculous. And that line just doesn't hold. On the other hand, you have to weigh the two equities here. This block might as well be a field with cows in it because there's nothing happening. So I'm just putting the two arguments out there and we have to be the judge. But that's the truth of it.
I'm just gonna say one thing, which is, I'm torn about this project in that I would love to see something in that space. It's been vacant for a decade plus, I think the report said. But the flip side is, if we go around the corner to the CVS windows, those are so bleak on this block. This building, while gorgeous and landmark, is uniquely difficult from a streetscape perspective. They're just so closed off and so static. While I don't want to get into the business of trying to figure out what should be in this space, I would like to see those windows a little bit more engaging because it is, while it would be some light, which is encouraging as opposed to darkness, it is not much more than that right now. So I'm troubled. Yeah.
Just quickly, I am afraid that we are all living in a new transition. That is, when I think when we were willing to say, please, no banks on the streets because they're dead space. And it was passed. And there was passion in what Gail spoke about when this was happening. The fact is that north of 96th Street up to 110th Street, the stores, the vacancy up there is just shocking and difficult and a surprise. And then you all have provided examples in the southern part of our district. So we are in a time now when the retail and part of what has animated the streets, even if we don't like the particular uses, is in trouble. So I have had a dilemma about this, but I'm feeling that maybe we should not be so extreme about this, that we've got to either find a way in our resolution to say, I'm not sure how we could experience it for a while or try it, but I'm no longer one to say no to this for all the reasons and all the facts that we have in the 59th to 110th Street on the commercial streets. That's what's getting to me.
All right. So I'm ready to join the people who have explicitly said they would vote in favor. And two of us, Richard and Louisa, have said we should defer. I think we probably have a majority now for some kind of favorable vote with or without qualification. So I'd like to propose a resolution, or at least suggest we move forward in some way with the resolution. Personally, I would vote to approve without conditions or suggestions, while working separately as much as we can with Gail and with whoever ends up there, and take very seriously Ron's, now on the record, Ron, offer to try to put some artwork in there, like now until they get a tenant. I wouldn't tie this resolution to that, however. So anyway, I'm happy to propose a resolution that we say yes.
Second. Wait, I did just have one question I wanted to ask Ron before we got to that. Ron, if you're at liberty to say, could you tell us, like, you mentioned other tenants have like tried to like get a lease to the space and then cut their losses after they couldn't get in. Could you give us a sense of like what kind of tenants those were?
I can't speak to, I mean, the bank, the bank tenants you mean, or other tenants?
They're all other banks. They're all other banks.
All banks?
The ones that couldn't get a lease because of this have to be banks.
I see, good point.
I miss Banana Republic.
Okay.
That's what was there.
To be second
Okay, the
motion.
question is moved.
So
Okay.
hold on,
Wait,
just to be clear, we need to decide what we're voting on, but go ahead.
So even though we have 5 banks, we will have 5 banks in a 5-block area, 6-block area. Right. What I would like to do is put in a condition that makes this specific only to this site.
Yes,
Yes,
this
it
is
is.
just for this
Yeah,
site.
yeah.
The application is
Unique
only
situation.
for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And reluctantly agree. I mean, I have not been able to understand why that site has stayed vacant for so long. It's, in planning terms, it's perfect.
Can we vote? Could I just suggest, in addition to the resolution to approve, that we include the suggested artwork and other things be a part of it? We're not making it conditional, but
Yes.
that should be in there as discussed tonight, okay?
Temporary or once there's a bank?
And once there's a bank,
I think that-
temporary, and once there's a bank.
I think.
No, this isn't conditional.
No, I know,
These are
but
suggestions.
I think there's a lot of like putting ridiculous, sorry, not to say ridiculous, but putting excessive asks upon it. I think it's fine to say, while it's vacant, it'd be great to put some art in there. But I think it's kind of crazy to say, and once the bank's there, also.
I
put some
think
art in there.
that you're not making it conditional, you can suggest what you want,
Right.
and what's wrong with that?
I definitely
Yeah.
think we should suggest something about activating the windows.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, because the
That's
whole
right.
idea
Okay,
of this was that banks were dead space.
All right. So resolution to approve it suggests that there's art in the windows now and art in the windows forever after.
Well,
Or
the suggestion that
activating.
they use something to activate the space.
Okay.
To
Activate
make
the-
it more
Yes.
lively than a bank normally would
Okay.
be.
Yeah.
Okay, all
Nothing
in
is
favor?
All in favor?
1, 2,
It's unanimous.
11,
Again,
12. Richard, is that a yes?
Richard,
I'm abstaining.
Oh, abstain, okay. Any opposed? No. Abstaining. That's one. Richard, anyone else? No. And ineligible? Okay, non-committee votes? I think that's just your Beverly. Is there anyone else?
Vote yes.
Okay, so the vote passes. The committee vote is 11-0-1-0, non-committee 1-0-0-0.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go next.
We will get back to you with the resolution. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Good night.
Okay, we've just a few quick things.
how quick?
NYCHA update, but can we do one admin piece? So we wanted to move up, we're planning for our next June meeting to be about the Charter Commission, both the mayoral commission as well as the city council commission. But in order to get our resolution ratified through the full board, we need to change our meeting time. Because right now we'd be after the steering committee meeting. So there are 2 dates available. Wanted to poll the group. We could either do Thursday, June 5th or Monday, June 9th.
I prefer Thursday for what that's worth. Works better for my schedule.
It's better for me.
I prefer Monday.
Thursday, June 5th, you said?
Thursday, June 5th or
In the
Monday,
evening?
June 9th. Yeah, 6:30.
Show of hands.
I
Yeah,
have
show of hands for June 5th.
Thursday, June 5th.
Thursday the 5th.
Raise your hands.
It's hard to know, but I guess, is there another option for those? who-
Monday.
Okay.
It's Monday or Thursday.
Okay, Monday.
Okay,
Monday.
Monday?
I like Monday.
Oh, okay.
Monday.
Seems like
Parks doesn't usually
due
do
on
on Monday,
Monday,
but not that.
it's a different Monday. Yeah,
Thank you.
Parks is the following.
Okay, so.
Okay,
is
so I
that-
think Monday it is.
Is it Monday the 2nd?
No,
Ninth.
the ninth.
Oh, no, I'm
Ninth.
so sorry. Please excuse me.
Would this be instead of the 18th meeting or
Okay.
possession?
Yes.
So this would be a
Okay.
move.
Instead of, exactly.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Tibita. And then we also have one piece of new business, our very patient guest.
Okay, quick NYCHA update. So as you guys might know, there have been a couple of town halls, where a bunch of, different stakeholders have met to see how we can improve things, whether it's police, tenant leaders, tenants. Separately, I've been having conversations with some, NYCHA, officials. And a few items have come to the forefront as things that that we're collectively as a community trying to work on. One of which is the security doors at the multifamily, at the, you know, the Amsterdam and Douglas houses. The issue is you can pull on the door, like, you know, you have to, it's the electronic lock on the door. If you pull on it hard enough, you can open it, then the door is broken. These doors are very expensive to replace, and it takes time to replace them. While they're broken, then there's very little security in the building. So, you know, the NYCHA tenants, that's like their number one priority for improvement, the number one ask. So we're trying to see what we can do with that. And the recommendation came from one of the maintenance leaders at the Douglas houses was to have doors with no handle, where people could use their existing fobs they have on their keys. And then that door can be linked to the existing intercom system, right? But the main thing is having, you know, a sturdy, you know, fire rated door without a handle that can be opened with the existing technology. So the next step would be trying to A, get the number of doors for each property that are needed, and then B, find the actual door, a locking mechanism, and get estimates for that, and then we can have an ask of saying, we need 35 doors. And, each gonna cost, X, $30,000 or whatever. And then we can, from there, as a community board, come together and present this as a need, right? So it could be in our district needs, or it could just be something that we pass resolution and then seek funding from any of the many different municipal and philanthropic sources that we can find.
Why is this a matter for the community board, just to say we're asking?
Yeah, so-
But I mean, you're asking for the federal money involved in NYCHA and the focusing on this particular need in this and then, and we as a community board are saying therefore, please do that? I'm
Yes,
not quite sure.
Well, I mean, we're using our advisory, two capacities, our advisory capacity, but also our convening power, right, to bring people together to say, here is what we need and how this problem can be solved. And then we work with other people, other entities to get that funding and to facilitate it getting done.
So attached to the email that was sent out for this meeting was a agenda. Okay,
Yeah.
this was a town hall meeting convened by Goddard Riverside and several tenant elected people from all of the different NYCHA developments in our district. They have identified these 3 issues, 1, 2, 3, 4 issues. And one of them is what we are trying to talk about here. That's the context of this. The others are a little more operational, but we also hope to address them. They are the needs identified by the elected tenant officials.
So I read the report of that town hall or whatever it was called that you attached, and thank you for that. I mean, personally, I think that any system of doors that doesn't have handles and that requires the use of electronics is maybe a bad idea, but it's not up for me to say because it's their idea. But if the electronics fail, then you can't get in the door. So I don't think that's such a great idea, but it's not my door, it's their door. But I'm also, like others, I think not entirely clear on what anybody's asking us to do right now. Are you looking for resolution?
I think.
Oh, not here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we putting in the district needs? Is that?
I mean, why are
That's one
we putting
idea.
in?
That's one idea.
Because like the district needs, we talk about next month, the beginning of the district
Why
needs
don't we
report, and we
say
could
it's
put this
part
in
of
as
our
a
budget
funding
request?
line.
Yes, exactly.
As part of the community board process.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
you're flagging this, and that when we do, and at our meeting, and we do the budget priorities, we put that high on the list.
Except
Yeah,
we
that's
we've
right.
many
Isn't that a
times,
federal expense
yeah, we've
though?
many
I know,
times,
that's my problem with this.
yeah, we've many times
I
said,
agree,
wait a
because
minute.
it's
It seems like a
NYCHA
federal
doesn't
expense
belong on
and
our
it seems
budget
like routine
things.
maintenance.
Right, that's why I
Yeah,
was
so-
all in favor, but it's federal money, so it's
Exactly.
hard.
So the first step is getting to the
If we
number,
put it on district needs,
right?
then
And then we can decide
That's why I think
how we want to go about it. It might be
Yeah,
asking
sure.
for money from the government, local money, state money, our money, right? So there's many ways this can be paid for, and it can be split up,
Maybe
but we just need to, the first step is to get our arms around what the problem is and find a door solution, right? And then funding is the next conversation, which we're not going
Okay,
to
so
solve here
we
tonight.
could say now tonight, we support the need for this and done, and then we've got to, with the meeting, go and be more specific.
As somebody who's actually had to replace in a supervisory role, NYCHA doors, these are not inexpensive doors.
Yeah.
These have to, first of all, we're talking about at least prevailing wage rate. Okay,
Yeah.
publicly bid. You need temporary security while you install the doors. Okay, you can buy a new car for less for each pair of these doors.
Yeah.
And you have to have a door that doesn't, it has to fail open because these are the egress doors from the building.
Yeah.
A whole bunch of series of requirements here, and I don't think it's our business to say what the requirements
Right.
I
are.
think we
And
should
it doesn't
just-
sound
next
like,
week when we're working on our district needs, it seems like we should just say that we would like attention paid to the
Yeah.
doors at NYCHA campuses.
that
in our
provides
district.
security.
I think that is sufficient, and getting any more detail is.
But it's
so-
a much bigger budget item than you think by the time you get done.
I
with
think
this.
that's fine.
It's like
Trust it's very-
$70,000 per door right
Yeah,
now
I trust that.
to replace one door.
But
That's
that's,
the-
Okay,
let's
you're
put in the district needs.
Yeah, put it in the district.
Probably in the
I agree.
ballpark.
That's- I mean,
That's what they
told
said,
us.
that's what they told us.
Okay,
Yeah.
onward, no, okay.
Okay, that was it.
No, I think it's,
All right.
let's work on
Motion to
the,
adjourn.
No, we
Well,
have.
no,
I'm joking, I'm joking, I'm joking.
I'm up.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, first of all, thank you for accepting a drop in. I've got a 1-minute speech because I really just came to meet all the movers and shakers here. And we're, in my building, we're looking for information and advice. I live at 711 West End Avenue. I'm in Gale Brewers District. Our landlord has a plan to eliminate our 24/7 doorman. And DHCR has given them permission. And we are just bonkers because more than 70 of us, this started 2 years ago. More than 70 of us wrote all of our objections. We hired a lawyer. He summarized it, did a legal analysis. And the order that came back makes no mention of any of the factual and legal, objections we raised. So everybody is up in arms. We still have our lawyer. We are going to appeal. That is due by the end of the month. We've made some friends in the office of our state senator and our assembly member. We've been in touch with Gail's office, but there is, I do understand the difference in turf. That's a state agency.
Yep.
She's city and all that. But the two young ladies who work for our assembly member and senator, very encouraging. They looked at my package, our package that I sent to them. And they're really engaged, and they can't do much until we file our appeal, which is due just before the end of the month. And then lastly, I've been in touch. One of our tenants has already filed a complaint with the New York City Human Rights Commission. And we've already made some informal feelers with both the state and the city Human Rights Commissions because our building is not accessible. I don't know whether the landlord has ever visited. You know what I mean? It's unbelievable. So anything else you guys can think of that we should be doing?
You're all rent stabilized, right, or some?
Yeah, it's a stabilized building, right?
You may have some controlled even. left.
Sorry?
You may even have some rent controlled left or not, but it doesn't matter, you're stabilized.
Yeah, we are stabilized, by far, most of the apartments are stabilized. I don't even think there are any more control in that building.
Just the market rate as well?
Pardon?
Are there market rate as well?
Well, they combined a number of apartments some years ago, within the past decade, that kind of slowed down. So they came in at much elevated rates, but as I understand it, they are now stabilized at those higher rates. So I think it's 133 units, not a giant building, but that's our story. And
Oh,
so
you got rid of the building above you some years ago. You did really well with that.
we
Right,
did, yes,
right.
and we killed ourselves on that one. I don't know how many of you could possibly remember, but
Oh,
there
yeah.
was a proposal to build another, we're 7 stories high. They wanted to build another 7, they're gonna build a platform over a table on which there'd be another 7 stories. We fought it for almost a year, but finally they figured out that there was enough of a paper trail that if they ever had a problem, that it was not gonna be good. So that's it, that's my whole speech. And as I say, if anybody, I don't know, could I perhaps, if ideas spring to mind, maybe if I could ask you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You could do a resolution of support to DACR. You guys could do that if you want.
Yep.
A letter.
can I ask a question?
You can?
Sorry?
Can I ask a
Whether you
question?
can or not,
Is
doesn't
the
matter.
idea of
They
a
don't listen.
24-hour doorman because you need you can't access the front because there's steps? Is that the
Yes.
challenge? Okay, sorry, you just weren't clear on that.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the lobby is, well, broadly, it is
Yeah.
not accessible.
So residents are saying need help
They
basically
also,
getting up
we
the
have a
steps.
wheelchair lift, which was
Okay.
installed between 15 and 20 years ago, I believe. One of the tenants called the Commission for the Aging.
Yeah.
And they sent people from agencies to look it over, and they told the landlord, "Lad, you gotta put in a wheelchair lift." That wheelchair lift is not self-service. On a couple of levels, it's not self-service.
So someone needs to be there
And-
to support the lift.
Sorry?
You're saying someone needs to be there to operate it and.
Yes, they operate it.
there's a button to hold the exterior door open. I mean, you can't reach it from a wheelchair. So like it would need a lot of work before it could be a self-service lift.
So what is the landlord proposing to do in lieu of, if anything? in
Not a word.
Just a locked door and you,
Oh, it's gonna be, our vestibule, you walk through an exterior door into a vestibule, which is where the doormen now are. And then there's a door which would be locked, right? This is a very large vestibule, and I think I figured it's more than 150 square feet. And the exterior door is gonna be open, and then the interior door would be locked, and we'd have key fobs. And,
how would guests get it? How would people who are non-residents get it?
instead of an intercom system between the doorman and the tenant, it would now be a buzzer system. It's, and remote surveillance, because that's just as good.
What does that
And,
mean?
I mean, I don't even wanna go through all the details, but like, we're the only block on the west side of the street, we're the only building on the west side of the street. The side streets are SROs and so forth. Right near the entrance, it was built with lovely places for vegetation and lots of hiding places. And then there's this giant vestibule, which would be open. I mean, in the winter, you'd have people sleeping in there, and you could fit a lot of people,
And furthermore, you'd have people, as always has happened historically in New York, where you have a buzzer system, that they buzz in strangers.
Oh, yeah. A buzzer system is not the same as a doorman. So the intercom system is 70 years old. The building first took in tenants around 1952, I believe. And almost no one has any intercom. So the doormen have basically kept a logbook with phone numbers, cell phone numbers, landline
You've
numbers.
documented all of that in your appeal.
Yes. Well, the
Okay.
appeal is coming, but
In
our
your-
initial
in your-
objections, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I got a nice thing.
Proceedings. Sounds like they've done everything right. I mean,
Yeah.
we've had people who've come before us with horrible stories and we said, have you spoken to your assembly person? They go, duh, no, we haven't. And you've done that. You've spoken to your state
Yeah, they are
senator.
the ones to help, absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I
Gail
felt
here.
I felt very positive after those conversations.
Well, there's gonna be an election, so.
Okay, so, any thoughts, and if some thought comes to mind, if perhaps I should give you my contact information. that would be
Read
great.
it and the office.
And thank you for allowing, I really learned a lot here.
Okay.
Happily, years ago, in connection with that project, I read a bit about zoning. So, because that would have been tough if I'd never read anything about zoning. Whereas the second problem with that was more accessible readily.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Yes, please.
Yes. All in favor?
Yes.
All right.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
What about publicity?